The train station was a place that seemed forgotten by time. The iron roof was rusted, the windows coated in dust, and the long wooden benches creaked under the weight of silence. The echo of footsteps wandered down the empty halls, broken only by the occasional whistle of a departing train. People came and went, hugging, laughing, carrying their bags to new destinations. But on one of those benches sat a woman who had not moved for 3 days. Her name was Clara. And her heart had been waiting as stubbornly as her body had. She had arrived with dreams packed inside her chest, clutching the promise of a man who told her he would meet her there, that together they would start fresh, no more distance, no more loneliness. In her mind, Clara had painted the scene: he would step off the train, their eyes would meet, and they would fall into an embrace that sealed the beginning of a new life. But the trains kept coming, and none of them carried the face she longed to see. On the first day, she told herself there must have been a delay. On the second, that something important had held him back. On the third, when the clock hands dragged across the dawn, she knew deep down he wasn't coming at all. Still, she sat. Because sometimes the human heart would rather cling to a painful hope than admit the rawness of truth. By the third morning, her tears had dried. What replaced them was something heavier, the still, aching numbness of abandonment. Clara pulled her coat tighter around her and stared up at the great clock above the ticket booth, its hands mocking her with their endless circles. She was just about to stand, to give up and disappear, when she heard something unusual. The sound of boots. Not the boots of grown men, heavy and deliberate, but the quick, earnest thump of small feet trying to fill shoes too large. Clara lifted her gaze and saw him, a boy of 6, maybe 7. The boots nearly swallowed his little legs, clunky with every step, but he wore them with a kind of solemn pride. In his hand he carried a felt hat, and in his eyes, those wide, serious eyes, there was none of the shyness you might expect from a child. He walked straight to her. "Are you waiting for someone?" the boy asked, his voice polite, almost formal. Clara swallowed. "Yes," she whispered. "But I don't think he's coming anymore." The boy frowned as if that answer wasn't good enough. He pressed the hat against his chest, took a breath, and spoke words that knocked the air right out of her. "Then, will you marry my daddy instead?" Clara blinked at him, stunned. "What did you say?" He repeated himself, softer but with conviction. "My daddy is always alone. He's good, he works hard, but he doesn't smile anymore. And I thought, if you don't have anybody, maybe you could love him." For a moment, Clara could only stare. It was absurd, unexpected, tender, and piercing all at once. This child, with his clumsy boots and his impossibly sincere eyes, had just cracked open her heart in a way no adult ever could. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Samuel," he said proudly, puffing his chest. "And my daddy's name is Daniel. He fixes trains. He's back there, in the workshops. I saw him looking at you earlier, but he didn't talk to you. He never talks to anyone." Clara turned, her eyes widening. Had someone been watching her during these lonely, humiliating days? A man, hidden behind work and silence, carrying his own invisible burdens? Samuel extended his small hand toward hers. "Come on," he said. "I want you to meet him." Clara hesitated only a moment before she rose. She didn't know why she followed him, maybe because hope had been shattered and she had nothing left to lose, or maybe because the child's innocent faith lit a spark in her that she thought had died. Either way, she let him lead her across the station. The workshop smelled of grease and iron. Sparks flew from welding tools, engines groaned under repair, and the skeletons of old locomotives loomed like tired giants. In the midst of it all was a man. Broad-shouldered, dressed in worn work clothes, his hands blackened with oil. His face was lined, his eyes weary. Daniel. He looked up when he heard their footsteps. His gaze fell on Clara, and he froze, wrench still in hand. "Papa!" Samuel cried. I brought someone for you. Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion. Samuel, what did you do? The boy grinned mischievously. I asked her to marry you. Daniel's face went red. Clara pressed her lips together to stifle a laugh. The silence stretched awkwardly until Daniel scratched the back of his neck and muttered, I'm sorry, my son says things without thinking. But Clara shook her head. Don't apologize. In fact, I think your son just gave me the most beautiful words I've heard in days. Daniel's eyes softened, studying her more carefully. There was something broken in her, he could tell, something that mirrored the fractures in himself. A man who had lost too much, a woman abandoned too soon, both stranded in a station that smelled of departures. The days that followed turned into a gentle rhythm of unexpected meetings. Clara didn't leave after all. She told herself it was temporary, just until she decided where to go next. But really, she stayed because Samuel always found her, tugging her hand, asking her to wait until his father finished work. They talked about ordinary things, the weather, the trains, the little shops around town. And with each passing hour, something softened between them. Clara learned that Daniel was a widower. His wife had died years before, leaving him with a baby to raise. He had buried himself in work, repairing trains and earning just enough to keep food on their table. He didn't complain. But he didn't laugh much either. And Samuel, sharp-eyed and tender-hearted, had noticed. So the boy decided to fix the one thing his father couldn't, his loneliness. What Clara hadn't expected was that Samuel would also begin to mend her. One evening, as the sunset painted the rail yard in gold, Daniel finally spoke honestly. His voice was low, rough with hesitation. I don't know what brought you here, or what you've been waiting for. But since Samuel met you, he's been laughing again. He hasn't laughed like that in a long time. And, he paused, shifting uncomfortably. And I find myself smiling too. Clara's throat ached with unshed tears. I came here for someone who never arrived, she confessed. I thought my story had ended before it even began. But maybe life was just preparing me for something else. Daniel looked at her then, really looked. Slowly, awkwardly, he reached out and took her hand. His grip was calloused but gentle. There were no grand speeches, no sudden declarations of love. Just the quiet understanding of two people who had been wounded by life and, somehow, had found one another in the wreckage. Samuel, who had been eavesdropping nearby, clonked his boots loudly across the floor and beamed. So does this mean you're really going to marry him? Both adults burst into laughter, tears in their eyes. Months slipped by. What began as a child's bold request became the seed of something new. Clara stopped being a woman abandoned at a station and became part of a little family. She found joy in simple things, cooking meals with Samuel perched on a stool beside her, laughing at the grease smudges on Daniel's hands, hearing the boys' boots stomping down the hall. The day they finally wed wasn't in a grand church or a polished hall. It was right there, on the station platform where Clara had once waited 3 endless days for someone who never came. But this time, she was not alone. Daniel stood beside her, his rough hand steady in hers. Samuel, wearing new boots and an oversized smile, proudly joined their hands together. Now no one will ever be alone again, he declared. And Clara realized in that instant that sometimes, the trains we think we've missed aren't failures at all. They are redirections, leading us not where we planned, but exactly where we belong.